When Helle met Isakin at the psychiatric facility, they exchanged numbers and decided to meet again. But the relationship would only turn more and more toxic and eventually end in Helle's death. Was it the mental problems or the drugs or a combination of both that made Isakin commit one of the most gruesome attacks imaginable? This is the case of the cannibal Isakin Jonsson. So hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Elin and on this channel I cover true crime cases that have occurred in the Nordic countries. This is a pretty disturbing case and I'm gonna mention or include disturbing details, drug abuse, domestic violence, mental problems and suicide as well as cannibalism. This is also a case that I decided to split into two parts since it's basically two separate cases, but they do have a connection in the end that I think is pretty interesting but also pretty disturbing. So the next part should be up in the end of the week or in a couple of days, basically as soon as I get it filmed and edited. With that being said, now let's get into the case that happened in Sweden. Helle was a 40-year-old woman born in 1970 who was working in an elderly home. She was a mother of 5 children from different dads and they were all placed outside of the home as she did not have a stable home for them. 3 of the children actually had the same dad and he described Helle as manipulative towards everyone around her and also basically as a pathological liar. Helle's sister has stated that Helle was happy and caring when she was feeling good, but she also had a very turbulent life. Helle suffered from bipolar disorder and her life was overall pretty rough. She had been married and gotten divorced and this led her into having money issues, so she had taken loans and even taken some of the loans in her own children's names. She was also addicted to drugs and this only worsened her economic situation. Because of this, Helle was frequently kicked out of her apartments and then she would just jump around from man to man, sometimes even her ex-boyfriends, to have somewhere to stay basically. After years of living this unstable life, she tried to commit suicide and ended up in a psychiatric facility. In this psychiatric facility, she met a man and they exchanged numbers so that they could continue talking after their time in psychiatric care. This was a man called Isakin Jonsson. Isakin Jonsson was born in 1978 and he actually got the name Jimmy, but he later changed this to Isakin. He grew up with his mother since his dad left the family when he was only a couple of years old. And Isakin had a very troubled childhood. He was often in psychiatric facilities and he always felt like he wasn't taken seriously. When he was 8 years old, his mother met a new man and this was not a great man to say the least. This man had alcoholic problems and he was also a pedophile since he used to watch very much porn that also included children. On top of this, he was abusive towards Isakin's mother, and we don't actually know if he was abusing Isakin as well, but we do know that he was not being nice towards him either. Isakin's mother stayed with this man for 7 years, so until Isakin was 15, and remember, he was 8 years when they met, so these are really important years for a child and young man. At this age, Isakin started to get in touch with his cousins from his biological father's side, and this group of people were just not a great influence on him. He shaved his head and became a so-called skinhead, which also meant that he became racist towards other races than the white. Around the same time, he also became addicted to drugs and started committing crimes. But he got caught by the police and ended up snitching on the others in the group, and this led to him getting serious threats. To get away from these people and threats, he moved to another city where he started school and his grandmother also lived in this city. At the time, life felt good and the future looked bright, and when Isakin was around 17, he met a girl that he started a relationship with. She ended up getting pregnant and they got a daughter named Jamie Lee together. But during this time, he also started using drugs again and he fell back into a bad lifestyle consisting of crimes. He ended up being sentenced to care and he got a diagnosis which was ADHD, so he started getting medication for this even if he tried to tell the doctors that this might not be a good idea since he was addicted to drugs. He was also suffering from social phobia, and apart from the ADHD, he also had deficits in motor control and perception. According to himself, he was also hearing voices, and he described hearing the devil inside of his head. So it was during this time that Isakin ended up meeting Helle, and pretty soon after meeting in the psychiatric facility, they started a relationship. It's pretty unclear what the relation to the mother of his child was at this point, but I'm guessing that they broke up because of his drug addiction and criminal lifestyle. What I do know is that his daughter sometimes spent weekends with her dad and Helle, and she has described there not being a day without fights and chaos. So let's get a bit more into Isakin and Helle's relationship. Isakin got an apartment to live in from the state through the social services, and according to this contract, he was not allowed to have anyone else living in this apartment. So Isakin and Helle were first living separately, but in the end of the year 2009, Helle broke her leg, so because of this, they ended up moving in together. Even if they moved in together, their relationship was far from good, as people in their surrounding believed that there was domestic violence going on in the relationship. Helle's leg injury was very suspicious, and she always gave different answers to people asking how she broke her leg. And I mean, considering the fact that Isakin had seen abuse as a child, it's not really that strange to think that he could have been abusive himself. Sometimes Helle would go to her parents and stay there just to get a break from Isakin, and many times the parents saw blue marks or other marks on her body. She had also asked her sisters for help sometimes when Isakin was hitting her, but according to some sources, she never straight told them about any abuse. One of Helle's sisters had gotten a bad feeling from Isakin the first time that they met, and she thought that he was just not a good person and might hurt her. According to her, there was many warning signs, and she knew that he had a bad temper, so she often tried to push Helle to leave Isakin, but Helle never left. Helle was still very addicted to medication and was desperately trying to get medications from doctors, even through her sons, probably so that she and Isakin could use these. Helle often told Isakin that he acted as if he had two personalities, and at first he had been angry about this, but then admitted that he needed help. Doctors did, however, never take him seriously, so he never got any help for this. Helle had written in a diary that was later found in Isakin's apartment that he had a very bad temper and that she was sometimes scared of him. In this diary, Helle also mentioned Isakin's two personalities and that his other personality often talked about punishments and that the evil wins over the good. She did also write in this diary that she loved him and she wanted to stay with him regardless of his strange and aggressive behavior. And even if the relationship was super toxic and chaotic, they were planning their future together as they wanted to open a tattoo and piercing studio one day. At some point in the relationship, it turned out that Isakin was cheating on Helle with at least two other women, and Helle found out because a woman came to Helle and told her that she had been having a relationship with him for a pretty long time. This made Helle jealous and hurt, of course, but she still ended up staying with him after this. But Helle did contact a woman and tried to get help because she wanted to find an apartment or some kind of place where she could stay even just for one night to feel safe, so this is pretty telling that she felt super unsafe at home. On the 12th of November 2010, it had been a pretty normal Friday morning. Helle and Isakin woke up together after sleeping out. They ate breakfast before going out to buy some stuff. Helle went to the store while Isakin went to buy some alcohol. It was actually a good day, they were on good terms, and the only negative thing was that Helle's belly had been hurting, so she was feeling sleepy and tired. Two social workers came to do a surprise visit at Isakin's home, and remember in the beginning when I said that he was not allowed to have anyone living with him, this was still the case, so this was probably the reason for the visit. The social workers had been talking with Isakin and he told them that Helle was not living there, and they then checked the apartment and found Helle resting. They started talking to her and noted that she was a bit quiet and shy, but eventually left the apartment as they thought that this was just due to her pain. Before leaving, one of the social workers noticed that there was an axe in the hallway leaning towards the wall. And according to her, this was a bit strange, so she actually asked Isakin what the axe was for, and he did not answer, so they just left. Exactly what ended up happening after this moment is still unclear to this day, But what we do know is that something awful ended up happening, and I'm gonna give a warning. This is pretty disturbing to listen to, and it made me very uncomfortable while researching this case. That night, Isakin called the emergency services and told them that he had murdered his girlfriend and that he had eaten her flesh. The dispatcher kinda didn't believe him at first, since this was so shocking, and it was also very hard to hear him because he was speaking very unclearly. When the police finally arrived at Isakin's home, the first thing that they saw was a head on the sink in the kitchen. A frying pan with meat was on the stove, and they really didn't think much about the meat at this point since they just thought that this was normal meat. In one of the bedrooms, the police unfortunately ended up finding Helle's body all covered in blood. Isakin had a hard time speaking, and he admitted to the act but claimed that it was his other personality that had done this. Isakin did not remember exactly what happened, but he had been drinking alcohol and mixed this with his ADHD medication, lost it, and then blacked out. He at some point went into the room where Helle was resting with a knife in his hand. He sat on top of her with one leg on each side and held her arms with his own knees so that she could not move. Isakin then decided to use his knife first so that Helle woke up and then on her throat. He took a pillow to protect himself from the blood that was pouring out, and after a short while Helle was dead. Isakin then proceeded to stab her, and he himself has stated that it felt like he was watching this from the side and as if he was not the one doing it himself. He then went out to the hallway, grabbed the axe and chopped her head off before putting it on the sink in the kitchen. He went back into the bedroom and had sexual intercourse with Helle's dead body. Isakin then suddenly stopped himself as he had something else in mind. He wanted to taste her meat. So he cut off some pieces of her flesh and started frying it in his frying pan, and he then calmly sat down at the kitchen table and started eating. Suddenly he realized what he had done and what he was doing, and he described coming back into his own body again. I personally feel like this sounds a lot like multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder, and I know that this is a very controversial disorder, but I wanted to bring it up in this video for people who don't know what it is. This disorder involves switching to other identities, and the person often feel as if they have multiple personalities. The person may feel as if they have two or more people talking or living inside of their head, or like they are possessed by other identities. Each identity may have a unique name, personal history, and features. These identities sometimes include difference in voice, gender, mannerisms, and even physical qualities. Dissociative identity disorder usually also includes amnesia and also includes times of confused wandering. According to the DSM-5, which is basically the handbook for different psychological disorders, symptoms of DID include the presence of two or more distinct personality states accompanied by the inability to recall personal information beyond what is expected through normal memory issues. Psychologists actually believe that severe traumatic events during childhood can cause this disorder, and the large majority of patients with DID report sexual and/or physical abuse in their childhood. This may cause the person to create another identity, possibly to disconnect from this trauma. Sexual, physical, and psychological trauma in childhood are removed from consciousness, and alternative personalities form as a way of coping. Other psychologists believe that this is not a separate illness and is instead a result of, for example, schizophrenia or PTSD. And I don't know exactly what the mental evaluation stated, and I'm not saying that this is what Isakin was suffering from, as I'm not a psychologist, but I'm saying that apart from the drugs, this could be a possibility from my perspective. I do, however, think that drugs could have caused a similar state of mind, so maybe it was just from these. But basically what makes me think that it's possible is that Helle wrote in her diary about his two personalities, and he himself has stated that he had two different personalities. So it kinda seems like this was a part of their daily life and not just while being intoxicated. Anyway, Isakin described not knowing why the murder happened, and according to tests he had 1.35 promille alcohol in his system, which is a lot. This mixed with medication could have made him aggressive and also could have changed his personality. He himself believed that the drugs were not a reason for what happened, and he described it being the second person inside of him. When he was asked how it felt during the act, he answered that it felt normal, kinda like making a sandwich for breakfast. A psychiatric evaluation was done, and this showed that he was mentally insane during the time of the murder. So the trial was pretty quick. I mean, he admitted to the murder, so there was not really many question marks. He was not sentenced to prison and instead closed psychiatric care. And basically the staff there cannot decide when he's ready to be released. It's only a decision that can be made by the court. After only a couple of years, he already got to make home visits, and his goal was to one day get out and start his life all over. And I tried to find information about where he is today, but I just could not find any information, so we just don't know if he's still in care or not. Isakin has also filmed YouTube videos where he talks about his life in the psychiatric facility, and I will try to show some clips in this video.
I see it like you are in a training of do you go to school or something at the best school I ever been in is here. 5 years of intense soul searching and go through books and painting, and I never been more fit physically and psychically, and yeah, life is good. I send this on Tuesday, and I will keep recording stuff in the forest like this, because here is the only place in this village I can be alone. I got tattoos in most places except my eyeballs. I got in places that only women see in intimate ways, and everywhere else I got tattoos. Would I feel, another question, do I feel the urge to kill again? Not right now. I don't really see me as non-free, because freedom in that sense does not exist. This is just I live just in a little smaller box than you out there in the free, because I'm freer in some sense here. I have less responsibility. I can focus all my time on working out my body and train my art. There is me and there is everything else. And the only thing that stops everything from being whole and connect to itself is me. Like a hair in the eye or a stone in the shoe. It feels uncomfortable. That's because that everything in this world is made to kill, to consume, to draw energy from everything. This is a planet of the rotten flesh. Because everybody go around rotten, everybody feeds of every other's misery, and just to rise again in some other form, to keep dying, to keep killing. The ultimate goal from everything here is death. You are dead. You're different stages are dead. I hope you all have a nice day. Bye.
In this facility, Isakin actually ended up meeting a new love, Michelle, who is known in Sweden as the Vampire Woman. And their relationship and the crime that she committed to get this kind of nickname and end up in the psychiatric facility will be in part 2. When Isakin committed the murder, his daughter was 9 years old, and she later wrote a book about her upbringing where she has stated that it sometimes took years between the meetings with her dad as a child. And can I just say, I think she's so beautiful. When I saw her, I was like, wow. But anyway, she finds it hard to describe their relationship as she loved her dad no matter what he did to her. Jamie Lee has also stated that she used to meet her dad regularly even after the murder, and they were best friends until she was around 19 years old. She has stated that something happened that made her feel as if she was not safe in his surroundings, so she decided to break off contact and never see him again. And I will link the book in the description, even though it's in Swedish. But this is where I'm gonna end the first part of the case, and the next part should be up on Thursday, so you can see this one as an extra case this week. I know that this was a disturbing case, and hopefully nobody ended up too traumatized to watch the second part. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that I will see you in my next video. Goodbye everyone.